Say hello for the video. Say hello for the video. Say hello for the video. Huh? Look how big he's gotten. Love you. The little baby is in jail because he was making a mess. Isn't that right, Samson? Okay, come on. Life with a staffy. So when we got Samson, he was on the website listed as an American staffy. But the older he's gotten, I think we're just kind of like accepting that he's probably a pit bull. A mini pit bull, because like pit bulls are definitely bigger. A pity. Yeah. It would appear that summer is pretty much over because there's definitely been a change in climate here. It's a lot cooler in the morning, which I definitely welcome, because going on these walks and coming back absolutely wringing wet is just, it's not the one, especially when you're doing it twice a day. Also, it's a lot emptier. There's not as many people out on our walks, which is lovely. Less people on the beach. I guess all the kids are going back to school. But another thing that's over is the diet. So wrapped up the diet last week. AJ gave me word on Tuesday morning that we have gotten lean enough and that we can now start growing. And you know what, this is going to be a really exciting part of this process, because the last few times where I've like done a diet, it's been while I've been doing powerlifting, and with that of course, is trying to keep like the rate of gain somewhat manageable. However, there's a certain weight or certain body composition where I perform my best for powerlifting, where like squat feels the best, where my bracing is feeling good, where the likes of bench press is feeling good. Whereas now the goal shifted to bodybuilding, and of course I am going to be getting stage again. There is definitely a higher emphasis on keeping body composition in somewhat of a reasonable place. So across the next couple of months, we are going to be looking at a relatively slow rate of gain, like probably a little bit less than 1 kilo of a gain per month realistically. And the emphasis, of course, is all on bodybuilding training. And I haven't had like a full off season as a bodybuilder before, and you know what, I mean, the fact I haven't been training like a bodybuilder in my off seasons has obviously not like done me any harm, which goes to show the amount of like muscle and development you get as a powerlifter if you are smart about your accessories in terms of exercise selection, as well as how well you actually push them, right? But I'm yet to get any change to my training program. I'm assuming AJ is going to send me over some, because I have kind of communicated to him that some exercises are just not really playing ball right now. And of course, after seeing what the base is looking like, you know, what level of muscularity is like, where my weak points are, where my strong points are, I'm sure there'll be some kind of adjustments to exercise selection and volume, which I will bring it to you once I get them. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun few months. I'm looking forward to coming into this phase with a renewed vigor. And I think like last year, like myself and Emma were still in like the honeymoon stage with being in Marbella. So naturally enough with that, we're going out for food a lot more. And again, that also powerlifting mindset of just being a little bit heavier. Whereas now across like the next pretty much 8 weeks until my stag at the end of October, Emma's gonna be away pretty much every weekend. So when Emma's away, I don't really have any kind of desire to like go out for food. Like I might get the odd takeaway here or there, but I'll pretty much just be able to like remain dialed in across like the next 2 months for sure, up until my stag, and then it's pretty much maybe a bit of travel towards the back end of the year, but that won't be any issue to manage from a body composition point of view. I'm feeling positive. I think this build towards 2027 is going to be something special, so I'm really looking forward to documenting the whole process. But yeah, food, I'm not going to go through how my food has changed really, because I am going to get my check-in feedback back from AJ this morning. We made a small increase last week, so see this week if you have any adjustments. If there's any adjustments, I'll keep you filled in. But today is going to be an upper body training session. Going to go through that, going to go through how my meals are looking today, and yeah, that's it. Check-in feedback is in from AJ. I'm glad I didn't share my macros with you because they have gone up. I'm never going to complain about more food. Training days, having 250 grams of protein, 500 grams of carbs, 70 grams of fats. So that's up from my lowest of my diet phase, which was 350 carb and 60 fat. Non-training days is gone to 250 protein, 400 carb, 90 fat, which is up from 250 protein, 250 carb, 70 fat. So I've had a pretty nice, or actually 80 fat. Anyway, I've had a pretty nice increase in the total amount of food there. I don't know how much it comes to in calories. I haven't even checked, to be honest. I have really just the whole diet been focused on the macronutrient values versus the calories. Previously, I would have always focused on calories and protein, whereas now, because I'm trying to be a little bit more detail oriented with the likes of AJ, because he expects that of me and I expect it for myself since I have such big goals, I've just really been focusing on protein, carbs, fats, and my variance for hitting them is within 10 grams of carbs and protein, and within 5 grams of the fat. So being as pretty detailed as I can with those, but again, that's what my goal realistically requires me, and I have the ability to do it. I find that pretty easy to do, and to be honest, sometimes when people have too big of a range, they can almost encourage them to be just like generally unstructured with their diet overall. And as well, with the less variance between macronutrients, especially like the carbohydrate intake, there's going to be less fluctuation on the scales. And as well, having a high carbohydrate and specific carbohydrate intake per day is obviously going to facilitate me having better recovery and better performance in my training sessions, which is naturally going to be quite important. Now, after getting those calories sent out to me, the next thing I need to do today is I just need to plan out my meals. So I'll put on the screen what I have for meal one there. It's pretty much the same as if I've been having through the diet with the addition of a bagel. So there's 2 eggs, 4 bacon medallions, tomatoes, mushrooms, and then a bagel with a bit of light cream cheese. And then alongside that, I have a bowl of oats, 65 grams of oats, 50 grams of frozen raspberries, 10 grams of honey, or say 15 grams of honey today because my carbs went up, and then 10 grams of peanut butter and 10 grams of crunchy almonds. When coming out of the diet phase, it is quite important that you don't just see that as like the end and then you revert back to old habits. It's meant to be kind of structured transition into an off-season setting and into getting close to a good off-season intake, which is going to help you drive your body weight up. But one thing you definitely don't want to do is just see it as the end point and then just like go back to what you're doing before the diet, because that's a recipe to just like pile on a lot of body weight, which is why we're kind of doing this reverse diet approach where we're essentially just kind of giving little bumps up here or there to my calorie intake, which is essentially just allowing me to adjust portion sizes. And that's kind of what I typically do. My go-to approach when it does come to increasing calories overall into an off season, into a gaining phase, is just increase portion size per meal. I don't add another meal in. I'm quite content just having 4 meals per day and just adjusting quantities. And then if I need to bring up the total calories per meal, adjust the food source. So an example of this would be if my calories got to a certain point where I needed to increase fats, but adding an extra fat source to the meal in terms of an actual ingredient, or adding more volume to it wasn't really too applicable, I didn't really want to, I could just change my chicken breast for a chicken thigh. Other things that I could simply do, as opposed to having like lots of potatoes in my second meal, my pre-workout meal, and increasing potatoes up to linearly scale the likes of carbohydrates, I could add in a little bit of rice and reduce the amount of potatoes, because white rice is going to be a lot easier to digest. It's not going to sit in my stomach too long, and it's going to help me get in those calories without really kind of adding too much of a burden to like to my hunger. So I'm going to bring you through exactly the changes that I'll be making today with the likes of my calorie intake and the likes of my food sources. If you go back a couple of videos, you'll be able to see there's definitely lots of full day of eating videos there on my diet calories, and you'll be able to see what the actual kind of changes are when I'm going through my meals today. I'm going to plan out on my macro factor. So it's one thing I always say to clients is if either you're getting a calorie change or you're looking to hit targets, plan your day out first. So my first meal there, I only got the check-in video while I was having my first meal. I didn't need to make too many adjustments to it, but the rest of my meals today, so I can hit my targets from today, are going to need adjustments. So I'm just going to take out my macro factor, plan out how I'm going to change meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, and then by the end of the day, I'll have hit my targets, right? Planning ahead of time versus getting to the end of the day and assuming or hoping that you're going to hit your targets. Assuming you're hoping is not going to work. It's not going to cut it for most people, especially if you got a high level goal. If you want to compete at a very high level powerlifting, you want to get to a high level of bodybuilding, you want to just achieve the best from your training, you want to achieve the best out of your physique as you possibly can, planning ahead is everything. And my clients are sick to that with me saying it because it seems it's just a small artifact, but it is ultimately like the difference between meeting your target at the end of the day or not. And whether you like it or not, you reaching your goal is decided by what you do today. The small daily actions that we do on a day-to-day basis, the process, something I'm massive on. It comes down to today. It doesn't come down to tomorrow or getting it done next week. It comes down to how are you applying yourself today. One thing you can take from this video, it's that are you giving your best effort towards your goal today? And sometimes your best effort is going to have it start with just putting a plan in place for the day. It is just about to turn 11. I need to get into some check-ins here, and then I'll show you what we're going to do for meal number 2. All right, meal number 2 is steak. And then we also have here rice, potatoes, broccoli. Here's some crispy chili oil on the rice, some almond butter on the likes of the broccoli. I'm going to dice up that steak now, and that is meal number 2, pre-workout meal going in. Got the 2 natty goats on Lawrence Greaves podcast. All right, we're at the gym now. Upper body session. I'm going to record all of the exercises, at least a set of each. Might not get an opportunity to speak. Every single time I'm going to record for YouTube today, Emma's like, oh, by the way, I have an appointment booked for the time when you are usually training. So I'm going to be not rushed, but Usually when I record and speak to the camera, it takes a lot longer. I've got about 2 hours here before I need to be home, so I need to be efficient. So what I might do instead is I think I may do a little bit of a voiceover. All right, we are in the gym now. So I'm recording this on Tuesday, the day after the training session. Now, I'm not going to go through exercise by exercise because I've done voiceovers for this session before. What I do want to talk about is changes to my program. So, after I got my check and response from AJ, he mentioned that we're going to make an exercise swap. Right, so on my leg day, so if you go back to the last video where you see I'm doing walking lunges, so the biggest dumbbells my gym has is 40 kilos. Well, 40 kilos in terms of dumbbells where I can actually grip it. These dumbbells I'm using here, they run all the way up to 60, but they've got fat grips. Now, even with straps, holding 60 kilo fat grips is near impossible. It's just very, very difficult. It's more of a grip exercise. So we've made that change. We've taken out the walk and lunge because I am doing the 40s. I'm doing it for enough reps that I'm just kind of getting a little bit bored of doing it. And we're swapping it for Smith machine and Bulgarian split squat. And everything else is staying the exact same, right? So the program, for the most part, since I started it 16 weeks ago, is staying the exact same. I have no issue with that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if a program is working, and to be fair, the only kind of movements here I've really had like many stalls or even slight regressions has been pressing, and that's even like just two exercises, right? That's my dumbbell flat press and my Smith machine incline press. Now, I definitely take some responsibility for like of the incline Smith machine press because I definitely started too heavy on that one and I was like chasing load initially and just running into a brick wall. But since I've started to strip it back and load a little bit more methodically and stick to my progression scheme, which I talked about in the previous video, it's gone a lot better. The dumbbell flat press, that's going to be a exercise that just with the stability requirements is going to be a little bit more sensitive to like body weight changes, and being down like 14 kilos is probably the one where I was expecting to have the slowest time to hold on to. Everything else, however, has been gone the right direction, and that's with bottlenecks to my recovery, right? So when it does come to making exercise swaps, I think it's important to recognize that there's only so many ways that you can train a particular muscle, right? If we think about our chest, we have, we can train it in like incline, decline, and more flat pressing, and then we can do some type of fly variation. But we really just have a press and a fly, okay? With our shoulders, we've got obviously three main heads that we're looking to target. We've got our lateral head, we've got our front delt, we've got our rear delt. You do front raise or any type of press, it's going to hit the front delt. We're going to do a lateral raise. That's pretty much the only move you're really going to do to hit the side delt. With a rear delt, you're going to do some type of rear delt oscillation like a fly, or you're going to do some type of upper back movement, okay? But we could probably say for certain, okay, if you were to just pick two exercises per muscle group, you're going to have the entire body covered, right? If you just list them out, write down two exercises per body part, and you're going to have pretty much the broad movement patterns like listed out for those particular muscles. So with that now, there's not a huge amount of like variation that we really need when it does come to muscle growth, because the main thing we're looking at is just bringing that muscle close to failure. The main thing that we are maybe considering when it does come to making changes to training programming and like making changes to exercise selection is going to be when stalls pop up. And I'm talking about like stalls for 3-4 weeks when there are no recovery bottlenecks. And that's like a true strength plateau. And even with that, the plateau, it's like, how are we defining it? Depending on your stage of lifting, plateau is going to be very different. So for me, I'm kind of expecting to progress maybe every other week to maybe, once to twice per month on an exercise, realistically with my stage of training advancement. However, with new exercises, that can be accelerated. So when I put in a new exercise, I can start to see progress almost week to week as I go through the skill adaptation. I get some neural gains too, but after 6 to 8 weeks running the same movement, I'm pretty much going to see from then on there's probably some changes happening at the muscular level potentially, right? We don't know for certain. We can't be certain, unless I did a biopsy and put my muscle under some type of ultrasound, or I did like some type of measurement of cross sectional area, right? Now, that's another it's just one thing to be mindful of. What's a true plateau look like? So making these like short-term training variations to the likes of exercise selection is probably not the best use of our time, especially if there are bottlenecks in the recovery. Okay. Now, again, as I said, my bottleneck to recovery has been the deficit. I've been in a prolonged deficit for a long period of time, 16 weeks, lost 14 kilos, got pretty lean. And now, on the way back up, I'm looking to kind of eat more calories. I should have a higher training intensity. I should have more kind of drive and more energy to last me through my training sessions. So, with the current training program, considering I've started it and I've only done it in the deficit phase, it stands to reason that if I run the same training program, I should be able to see even better progressions with more food. And considering my weak points haven't really changed all that much, like my weak points still are the likes of my delts, I could still kind of improve the likes of my chest, for example, and I still have some work to do on my legs too. The training program is perfect for that. You know, the training program is still tackling those body parts, and all the movement patterns I'm doing familiar to me. I don't have to go through any type of like again. I'm pretty skilled at them at this point, and now just my main thing is I just need to get strong as fuck at them. I think this is a big issue that a lot of people have when it does come to the process of bodybuilding. Like bodybuilding, it is kind of a boring process. Like you need to have a high threshold for doing the monotonous shit. Because like if your training program's changing up too often, and as well if you're changing up too often and you're running into kind of plateaus like every couple of weeks, that kind of says to me there's an issue here with the likes of your recovery more than anything. Like there's bottlenecks within your nutrition, there's bottlenecks within your sleep, there's bottlenecks within your stress habits, that are just not allowing you to progress over the long term. Like, yes, should you at some point within the training block feel a need to maybe take a step back and deload? For sure. But if it's happening every couple of weeks, there is a mismatch there, right? And that's at least my opinion. Now, once you take a deload or a step back, you should be able to continue having the progressions go again, you know? Uh, and 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 it doesn't necessarily even need to be a change in program. It just needs to be you just do more of the same stuff. And really, that's something that I've grown more and more certain on the longer I've been doing this. The more I just do similar exercises over time, I just pay attention to that gradual overload in either reps or load, get better, you know. And I think this is one thing that like people who are invested in building muscle can learn from the likes of powerlifters, because powerlifters, you know, they have the core lifts, the squat, bench, deadlift, and their mission is to get as strong at those movements as possible. And powerlifters are mostly having those programmed into their blocks, every single block, and they get stronger at them over time. And as well, the muscles that they're also trying to build up alongside them, to make the lifts more proficient or make the better the lifts, they also tend to be pretty static. Like you know, you'll stumble across some exercises which give you a really good return on investment, and you get strong in them. And what happens? Powerlifters over time generally go up 1 to 2 weight classes over their training career, and this is not because they're getting fatter. It's generally because they're gaining more muscle. So this is again something that people who are maybe dipping their toes into bodybuilding or they want to see large scale muscle shifts, stop overcomplicating with your training programming. Stop overcomplicating like the need for like maneuvering exercises all over the place. Find ones that suit you. Find ones that you really really enjoy, and rinse them for all they're worth. Like a lot of these exercises here that I've been doing since I started with AJ, I've been doing them like for a long period of time before then. Like you know, a nutria pull down would have always been my favorite type of pull down to do. A single arm pull down would have been another one. A tricep press down like this, for example. A cable curl. Other exercises that I'm doing here, God, I can't even think about on these days. For example, I haven't done the incline flies really. I haven't really done like the Smith machine, the flat press. Um, but even say for example, on leg day, right? Pendulum squat, ODLs, leg extensions, leg curls, they're exercises I've been doing for years and years and years. Like my legs haven't changed how to flex my knee since I've started training. Right, it's always been a leg curl to train my hamstrings, or RDL, or a seated leg curl. Again, there's not a huge amount that's changing really. The main thing that should be changing over time is that you're getting stronger in movements, you're applying that progressive overload to them, and you are going through phases which are supporting further progressions. So again, going through long-term bulks, you know, probably one of the best things I did across the last couple of years has been having that long-term mindset to my gaining phases. and allowing myself to gain for up to 12 months. One of the first long bulks I did was during COVID, and I did it for 18 months. And during that 18-month bulk, I went from 83 kilos to 98 kilos, and I got kind of fat. Like, you like at the end of it, I was fat. However, once I diet down to like sub 90, my physique looked better than I ever had at a sub 90. And now I've done that process 2 more times, and this is the result. And I can guarantee you, I don't have to guarantee you because it's proof like right here. But this is the best I've ever looked at this weight, and that's from keeping my exercise selection pretty similar, right? Like over time, and keeping the basics pretty similar too, right? When I'm training my accessories, as I mentioned earlier on the video, in regards to powerlifting being a good vehicle for driving muscle growth, especially when you're selective with your exercise selection and pushing them hard. That's all I've been doing. I've been learning how to upscale my training intensity over time. Hasn't been anything sexy with the likes of exercise selection, really. There's been small shifts, I'd say, in that, in my opinion, over time, but the basics have remained the same. Get better at the skill training, get better being able to push closer to failure, and do that for a long enough period of time, get strong, and voila. Again, it's just one of these things that you have to have a high threshold for boredom when it does come to bodybuilding, because it is a slow process. And I think people get impatient, and that's why they want to be kind of searching for the magic exercises, what's new on TikTok. And that's like something you see now on this like science-based lifting side of things, where you see people doing these like ridiculous exercises, like they're doing like the shortest range of motion possible. They're like full stacking weights. They're using cuffs. Like I have no issue with using cuffs, right? But it's like when you're using a cuff to lift the most amount of load possible, and you're not even like doing like sufficient range of motion. You're doing like like sub 5 rep range. Like it becomes it's not even an ego stroking competition because it just looks silly, And again, I think this is one thing that we have to remember is like we like we've all gotten better into from a muscle gain perspective across the last couple of decades because more research has become out on the fundamentals. But the more specialized or more smaller nuances of like exercise selection and even the likes of biomechanics, we don't know that much about in regards to how it drives muscle gain. And when we don't have too much knowledge in that, we have to look at, well, the most jacked people in the world, what are they doing? They're not doing that. They're not doing what the science-based lifting cult is doing right now, right? And yeah, maybe in 10, 20 years, you might say, oh, well, they were idiots, those bodybuilders back in the day, and the science-based lifters are right. But I'd bet my house on the fact that this is going to be a trend that's going to die as soon as people start ignoring it, essentially. Because again, the sexiest I've gotten in the gym is using some cuffs for the likes of a lateral raise or a tricep extension, but I'm still flexing that elbow, or I'm still getting into the stretch position. I'm still pushing things pretty hard. I'm still using moderate rep ranges and still using moderate amounts of volume, and voila, I think I'm a little bit bigger than these science-based lifters. So citation. Anyway, that's the end of the voiceover. Alrighty, we are back from the gym. Very, very good session. Very, very good session. I think for the most part, pretty much everything there was up, which is obviously the aim. So nice to have pretty much everything within that session going in the right direction. And now it's time for the post-workout meal. So I've actually been mixing up these Cocoa Pops. I've been mixing up these Choco Days. Choco Days, they are, to be honest, I don't really know how to describe what they are. They're just like, if you ever had like the Cocoa Pops, if you ever had like the Cocoa Pops shells, they're pretty much those. Just adds a tiny bit more volume. Not that I'm chasing volume or anything like that, but just adds a different type of texture, I guess. Right, next on to that now, because we're up to 500 grams of carbs. So 100 grams of cereal. We're going with 15 grams of honey. And then we're going to throw a bit of salt into it too. Again, just because I was sweating profusely, because it is very, very hot. And now the final thing we're going to throw in is going to be some whey. Now with the likes of the cereal, I'm going to use some low-fat milk, and with the whey shake, we're going to have some almond milk. So post-training, 200 mils of almond milk. Going to use 50 grams of whey isolate. Now, I'm actually robbing some of Emma's whey isolate, so don't tell her. She doesn't watch these videos, but I'm robbing some of this because I am awaiting a shipment of my own. Now, typically I would just use regular whey because I don't really mind it having the extra bit of fats or the extra bit of carbs. It also tastes nicer and makes better whey sludge. I always find if I make sludge with the likes of isolate, because there is no fat in it, it doesn't mix as well, or it's not as nice, essentially. The extra little bit of fat in it really does help. However, isolate is a little bit easier to digest and absorb. If you're on a diet, whey isolate is probably a better shout to go with, considering you don't have as many calories to be spending, and cutting out some calories from the likes of a whey protein is probably a good way to go, because you can probably get those fats and carbs from elsewhere. So, gonna blend this up. Boom. Add in my milk. Just 200 mils of low-fat milk. And we're good to go. And that is post-workout meal. Very simple, easy to digest. Won't affect my appetite from having dinner in about 2.5 hours. Alright, so we're out for walk numero dos. So as I was saying earlier about not slipping back into old habits, we get this face tracking on, might actually work this time. Let's talk about not slipping back into just old habits or the way you had been doing things previously to a fat loss phase. Obviously the diet is an important one. So off the back end of the diet, you should be trying to think about like the meals and everything that you've been having as like your base, right? Now from the base, every calorie increase you get, you're thinking about building on top of it. Might be adding in different food sources. You might just be increasing existing food sources. You might even add in another meal if that's something that would help you reach your target calories. Now, another thing that is really important to note, or ensure that doesn't go amiss once the diet ends, is that all of a sudden all the steps you've been doing, all the cardio you've been doing just ceases. Okay, so I'm still keeping up my 2 walks, exact same amount of steps as I am increasing calories. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because, well, number one, I like going out for walks. Samson has gotten used to 2 walks a day. It's sunny, so that's another benefit. Again, another opportunity to get a tan. But then as well, if I simultaneously increase my food up by, what's been increased so far, which is up to, 700 calories or so right now, have a 700 calorie increase, as well as, oh my god, this thing is so annoying, 700 calorie increase, as well as then dropping my steps down quite a bit, maybe do 1 walk a day. When you reduce the amount of steps you're doing and increase steps simultaneously, you get to a point where the amount of food you're taking in is just really not that much, or the increases that you need are really not that much to maintain your weight or get into a surplus. Now, over time, what I can do is, once I get up to a certain level of calorie intake, it will get to a point at which it's impractical for me to add in more calories from a type perspective, digestion perspective, or whatever. And then at that point, then I can look at reducing my step count down versus adding in more calories. And that's a simple way to do it. Again, you're not slipping back into old habits, you're keeping yourself active. And to be honest, for most of my clients, I will advise them to continue doing steps. It's good for your mental health to get outside. It's good to get out in the sun. Good for getting in some good vitamin D. Moving your body, as it's used to. If the only movement you do on a daily basis is going to the gym, you are sedentary. And there is even research out there showing that even people who do exercise for an hour a day are at risk of developing kind of diseases that are related to sedentary behavior, type 2 diabetes, developing the likes of obesity, and becoming overweight, high blood sugar, all these type of things, skewed lipids. And this is because there's 23 other hours of the day, 8 of those hours hopefully you're sleeping, You know, there's a lot of other kind of opportunities here today to move your body, keep your joints nice and fresh, get some extra movement in, burn some extra calories, and, you know, eat more food overall. Who doesn't want to eat more food and still be able to get in good shape? I don't know, that's how I view it. All right, final meal of the day is about to go down. We are gonna make a burrito bowl. We got our chicken, we got our pepper, we got our onions, frozen onions, just less prep time. Doesn't taste any different, no difference in nutritional value. Very convenient. If you don't like chopping up veg, that's one of the reasons you don't use it, get some chopped frozen. Got some garlic, got my mushrooms here, and we got some black beans. We have the salsa, and then we also have the seasoning. We're not too far away from having wraps. Join the party. I can imagine maybe 1, maybe 2 more calorie increases, God willing, we'll be able to get some wraps in here. I'm also gonna add in this like very, very low fat, high protein cheese, which I'll show you in a second. All right, so this is it here. Eat lean cheese. The macros are pretty nuts. So per 100 grams, 172 calories, 3 grams of fat, 36 grams of protein, and 1.7 grams of carbs. That is nuts. Obviously, it doesn't taste like cheddar cheese, but for me right now, it tastes just as good, right? Again, you have to remember, I'm just after coming out of dieting, so any type of cheese, any type of melted cheese is gonna taste pretty insane to me. Now, this is the final meal ready, and we're gonna add in a little bit of avocado oil, just for some good fats. All right, that is today done. Upper body training session, full day of eating on our reverse diet. So more videos to follow, of course, but project Get Absolutely Huge is underway. Let's get it. All right, if you enjoyed the video, comment. If you have any questions, subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video. It helps push the videos out to more people, helps the channel grow, and helps more people stop being small. Gotta eat. We'll chat to you in the next one.